Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a thriller film, The Scribbler. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a nervous young woman named Suki talking to Detective Moss. She asks for a pen, and with jittery hands, she starts scribbling on the table. She narrates that she has been diagnosed with a dissociative identity disorder. Her eccentricities cause her to stand out from other people, and therefore they want to eradicate her individuality. A well-dressed criminal psychologist, Juniper, walks into the room. Moss vacates his seat for her, and Juniper takes charge of the interrogation. Suki has cuts on her face and choppy blonde hair. She is defiant against authorities, and Juniper is no exception. When asked to share what happened, Suki just cryptically tells the two that she can't just start at the beginning. Moss has no time to play games with her, so he forcefully pulls out the pictures of the dead victims. He says that a lot of people have died in Suki's apartment building since she moved in, and she is a person of interest in that case. Suki points at a picture of a bearded man and insists that he is still alive. Sensing that Moss' attitude is just making Suki more uncooperative, Juniper instructs him to leave and find the man. With the two women finally left alone, Juniper asks Suki once again to tell her about what happened at Juniper Tower. Suki begins her story by saying that Juniper Tower was a halfway house for formerly institutionalized mental patients who are almost ready to be reintegrated into society. In a flashback, right when Suki arrived at the tower, a woman jumped off the building and landed right on the pavement in front of her. Her blood splashed on Suki's face, but she remained unperturbed and just carried on. The tower was an old and grimy building with graffiti on the walls and trash littering the hallways. Suki climbed up the stairs and encountered a naked woman, nicknamed Ms. Naked, who warned her about the dangers of loitering in the stairwell. Suki offered her coat, but Ms. Naked just laughed it off and ran away. A second woman, wearing an exotic costume while carrying a snake, introduced herself to Suki as Snake Lady. She explained that Ms. Naked has a pathological fear of clothes, and so she always runs around naked. Turning away while stroking her pet snake, Snake Lady issued a similar warning for Suki to stay out of the stairs. Suki had never been good at following other people's instructions, so of course she immediately returned to the stairwell. She heard a woman crying for help and saw the woman's shadow as she climbed up the stairs. At this point, Suki finally wised up and ran up the stairs as fast as she could. When she reached the 15th floor, she encountered a spaced-out woman wearing bunny ears. Her name was Bunny, no doubt after her favorite accessory. Without any greeting at all, she suddenly told Suki that they were all doomed to die in Juniper Tower. Suki was weirded out by this and entered her apartment. It's a drab unit with dirty furniture and dim lighting. There's no sugarcoating it. It was a depressing place to live and was barely better than a prison cell. Right then, the voices in her head began to speak, and Suki remembered her days in the mental institution. The doctors ran experiments on her and were trying to kill the multiple personalities living inside her head. They hooked her to a machine, which was used to kill patients' multiple personalities. One of the doctors remarked that 2 of her personalities have already been erased. A female doctor approached Suki, who was lying on a gurney all loopy from the drugs they gave her. She then asked her to open her mouth. With glassy eyes, Suki roared. Right then, someone knocked on her door. She was surprised to see that it was Hogan, the bearded but hormone-rich man in the photographs Moss showed. Hogan was a fellow patient in the mental institution. Suki was puzzled as to how Hogan ended up at Juniper Tower, since it's female only. But he explained that he checked the wrong gender in his forms, and he ended up there because of his mistake. But it turned out to be a jackpot for Hogan, since he was the only man in a building full of crazy girls. In fact, he'd been such a hit with the ladies that he even staged a suicide attempt, so he could stay at Juniper Tower longer. Later that night, the voices started encouraging Suki to sleep with Hogan. At first, she tried to resist, but her lascivious personality eventually won out, and Suki slept with Hogan that night. Back in the interrogation, Moss jokes that it must be fun having lots of personalities. Suki glowers and tells him that it's no fun at all, having no control of what you're doing or saying. Juniper steers the conversation and asks Suki about her experience with Dr. Sinclair in the mental institution. Dr. Sinclair had been using the Siamese burn method to erase Suki's personalities. However, this method involved extreme pain for Suki. He assured Suki that he was curing her, and it would all be worth it when she's finally normal. But Suki did not want to be normal because she detested society's pressure on her to conform. In the flashback, after sleeping with Hogan, Suki woke up to the voices in her head, calling her a whore. Obviously, this time, the machine had helped her erase her flirtatious personality who couldn't get enough of men. She chatted with Hogan, and she told him about the new treatment method that Dr. Sinclair prescribed to her. Suki grabbed the box and showed him the burn machine that inflicts pain to erase her personality. Hogan was shocked that the doctor would prescribe this to Suki, since it's no better than electroshock therapy. He then read the manual and became concerned over the possible side effects Suki could experience, but she disregarded what he was saying and threw him out of her room. After Hogan left, Suki sat in front of the machine and contemplated whether she should burn herself or not. Some of the voices in her head told her not to kill what makes her special, while others taunted her to go ahead. Suki squeezed her eyes shut as she inserted the wire into her mouth and turned on the machine. The next morning, Suki woke up and discovered that her personality, named the Scribbler, surfaced during the night and scrawled indecipherable words on her walls. She held up the writing on her sketchpad to the mirror and saw from its reflection that the Scribbler had written that Suki should trust herself. A few moments later, Dr. Sinclair called her. He told her that another girl had jumped from the building while she was sleeping. He also added that he'll be coming to her apartment on Friday to check how her treatment was going. Suki hung up the phone and heard a dog ask her if she was all right. Back in the interrogation, Moss interrupts her story once again and mocks the talking dog. Jennifer remains unfazed and explains that patients with dissociative identity disorder often hallucinate talking objects and animals to help them process what is happening to them. But Moss still doesn't trust that smelly bullshit and presses Suki about the fact that she was conveniently asleep the day when another victim was murdered. Apparently, it was Bunny who had died this time while Suki was sleeping. After she used the Siamese burn machine that first night, 2 of her personalities were erased, but Suki was far from cured. Aside from the talking dog, she had also hallucinated that the elevator was talking to her. Suki decided to take the stairs instead, and there she met a pale girl with short dark hair and glasses. This is the girl that terrorized the people on the stairwells. That's why the others had warned Suki to stay out of that place. The girl pushed her down the first flight of stairs and then asked Suki if she had seen her dog named Hogan. Suki said no, and the girl pushed her down the next flight of stairs and cheerfully asked her to send her dog home if she saw it. After that run-in, Suki made her way back to the hallway, and she saw Ms. Naked crying, but this time wearing a green dress, not naked anymore. Suki then banged on Hogan's door, and he explained that the girl pushing her was Alice, who was one of his lovers, and Alice could be a little territorial over Hogan, which was why she pushed Suki down the stairs. Suki inspected the gizmos lying around Hogan's apartment. He excitedly told her that he sometimes gets cryptic messages through radio waves and channels. Suki put on a pair of headphones, and a booming male voice said that she is now down to almost 2 personalities left, and one personality is getting louder and louder by the day. Suki remarked that Hogan's radio channel hobby is too weird for her, and she removed the headphones. But Hogan hadn't even plugged the headphones to the frequency yet, and he didn't know where that voice came from. Suki waved this off and just asked Hogan for a camera. Suki returned to her room and set up the camera to record her activities since she started to think that her Scribbler personality was the one killing those girls. The talking dog was still there, and it chatted with Suki in its British accent. Trying to figure out what happened, she subjected herself again to the burn machine, with the camera filming her while she's blacked out. This time, Ms. Naked died from jumping off the building while Suki was passed out. Another piece of Suki's past is revealed. Her 3 doctors were arguing about the merits of pushing through with Dr. Sinclair's therapy. The assistant was worried that the treatment would just force Suki's Scribbler personality to surface and take control of her body. He believed that the Scribbler was very dangerous and could even have superhuman abilities. The team had previously experimented on patient 99, who also had multiple personalities, and the results were disastrous. However, Dr. Sinclair is hellbent on continuing Suki's treatment to eradicate all her personalities. Suki woke up days later on the front steps of the building. She realized that days had passed while she was out. She also saw a newspaper headline about a patient escaping from Dr. Sinclair's mental institution. Suki later returned to her apartment, and Alice was waiting for her in the hallway. She insinuated that Suki had something to do with the murders in the building, but Suki paid her no attention and focused on opening her door, which was locked from the inside. When she finally opened it, she was surprised to see that the Scribbler had left more writings on her walls and had even shattered the camera. The word killer was written many times, and the burn machine was disassembled and cobbled together with other bits of machinery from Hogan's apartment. Later, Dr. Sinclair paid Suki a visit, and she kept him waiting outside the door while she tried to scrub the Scribbler's writing off her walls. She reluctantly let him in, and he asked her if she was still doing the treatment. He was about to go check the machine when he got the call that patient 99 had been found missing from his facility, just as the newspaper headline that Suki read before announced. Later, Suki showed Hogan the new machine that Scribbler had made in her room. He tested the machine on himself while Suki watched. A bright light exploded inside the room, and his eyes began to glow. He exclaimed that he had reached a new and freeing frame of mind, because the Scribbler transformed Dr. Sinclair's burn machine into something better. He tried to convince Suki to try the machine too, and she agreed. It ends up with the new machine killing her other personalities except for the Scribbler. Her hair grew longer, and she flew out the window. Back in the present, Moss is fed up with Suki's outlandish story. Juniper takes him aside and reprimands him for judging Suki. She believes that there is truth in Suki's story, and they need to hear everything before they can figure out what really happened. Moss reluctantly agrees, and the two nudge Suki to finish her story. In a flashback, once again, Suki had blacked out and woke up in a strange place. This time, it was a remote area in the city. It was dark when she found her way back to the Juniper Tower, where Hogan was sitting on the front steps with a huge puddle of dry blood. He told Suki that while she was out, Snake Lady jumped and died. Now Suki only had two personalities left, her true one and the Scribbler. Hogan tried to convince her to use the machine again in order to let the Scribbler surface, but she was afraid that there would be nothing real left in her after the machine was done. So Suki ran away from Hogan, and she called Dr. Sinclair. She was panicking because she did not know what was true anymore. She begged the doctor to lock her up, and he promised her he will come and get her. It was revealed that Suki grew up in a series of foster homes. The instability of her childhood led to the fracturing of her psyche and the creation of her personalities, so she could cope in that way. She didn't speak until she was 11 years old and only communicated by writing. She had no real identity because ever since she was a child, she was hospitalized and just cycled through her different personalities. Dr. Sinclair and his team deemed her as the perfect candidate for their trials. The assistant taped his first encounter with Suki, who was writing on the walls of her cell. He asked her where the real Suki is, and then writing began to appear and disappear on her skin. She wrote that Suki lived inside the Scribbler, and the Scribbler was Suki's true personality all along. Soon after, Dr. Sinclair arrived at her location to pick her up. While driving back to Juniper Tower, Suki saw a file and opened it. It was about a woman tagged as Patient 99. According to the records, Dr. Sinclair's machine made her worse. Suki freaked out and tried to explain that Patient 99 was an incurable homicidal maniac who killed her boyfriend's lovers and her boyfriend too. Suki then showed him Patient 99's picture and revealed that she knew where she was. She was actually Alice, the jealous patient stalking the stairwells of the building. It then becomes clear that Alice killed all of the girls in the building because they all slept with the hormone-rich Hogan. The Scribbler was trying to tell Suki who the real killer was. Dr. Sinclair started to call the police, but Alice suddenly jumped and landed on top of a car with superhuman ability. She knocked Dr. Sinclair out and chased Suki. Suki ran and made it to her apartment. She discovered Hogan inside, and he told her that he used the machine on Alice, hoping to make her better. But instead, it made her more powerful and vindictive. Right then, Alice arrived and threw Suki out of the window. Before she hit the ground, she transformed into the Scribbler, her true form. Ink began to appear on her skin, and her hair grew longer. It turns out the machine did not just change people, but also revealed who they truly are on the inside. Hogan is a child at heart, while Alice is violent and possessive. Suki faced off with Alice. The two were an even match with their superpowers, and they both landed blows at each other. Suki managed to electrocute Alice with an electrical wire, finally killing her evil persona Alice and surfacing Patient 99's good self. Patient 99 immediately regretted the things she had done as the evil Alice. Overwhelmed by the guilt, she jumped off the building, ending her shitty life. After the fight, the Scribbler and Suki inhabit her body at the same time, in a symbiotic relationship. The police arrived and hauled Suki in for questioning, which was how she ended up being interrogated by the two investigators, Juniper and Moss. In the present, the light begins to flicker in the room, and Juniper and Moss run up to Suki's apartment. They see that Hogan has used the machine on himself again, trying to distract the police and let Suki escape. So Suki leaves a recording behind, telling Moss that they will never logically understand her truth, but she fully accepts herself for who she truly is, despite what the world thinks of her. The movie ends with Suki in her Scribbler form, running out into the world as a free woman. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.